Whenever you try to read the book of Genesis, you eventually hit them, those long, long lists of names. So-and-so begot so-and-so. It is so tempting to just skip right over them, isn't it? But what if I told you those family trees aren't just filler? What if they're actually a masterfully crafted story, kind of like a narrative funnel, guiding us from the history of the entire world down to one single crucial moment? So let's just ask it straight up. Are they really just boring lists? Well, the authors of Genesis would say absolutely not. See, they were using these genealogies as this incredibly powerful storytelling tool. It's a technique that's so easy to miss, but I promise, once you see it, it changes how you read the entire book. And the key to unlocking all of this is a Hebrew word, toldat. It means generations. And throughout Genesis, this phrase, "these are the generations of," it just pops up again and again. You should think of it like a chapter marker. It's the author's way of saying, hey, pay attention, the story is moving forward right here. It is literally their map of history. So let's actually follow that map. We're going to start with humanity's fresh start right after the flood. Then we'll see how the story zooms in to find a single chosen path leading to a world-changing promise made to just one man. After that, we'll trace that promise as it becomes this chain of blessing. And finally, we'll see why all of this points to a history with a really deep and driving purpose. Okay, so our story kicks off right after the Great Flood. The world has basically been given a hard reset. Humanity gets a complete do-over, starting with just one family stepping off the ark into a brand new world. So the narrative starts with the widest possible lens you can imagine. Genesis 10 gives us what scholars call the Table of Nations. It's this huge, sprawling family tree that shows how the descendants of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, spread out and populated the entire known world. The camera is pulled all the way back, showing us everyone, everywhere. But, this united expansion doesn't last long. At the Tower of Babel, humanity's ambition and pride leads to division. God scatters them, their languages are confused, and that initial unity is just shattered. And this right here creates the central problem for the rest of the story. How can a scattered and divided humanity ever be brought back together? And this is where the genius of that told-out structure really kicks in. Because in response to the scattering of humanity, the biblical author doesn't even try to track all the nations anymore. Instead, the camera starts to zoom in. And you can literally see that zoom happen right here. In Genesis 10, Shem's sons are listed as just one branch among many, many other nations. But then, Genesis 11 comes back to his family. And this time, it completely ignores all the other branches and traces a single, direct line, generation by generation. The focus narrows dramatically until it lands on just one person, a man named Abram. Now, as the author is narrowing the focus onto this one family line, they're also subtly showing us that something else is changing in the background. Something pretty significant is happening to humanity as a whole. Just look at the data that's embedded in these genealogies. Before the flood, people lived incredibly long lives. Noah lived to 950, his son Shem to 600, but after the scattering at Babel, look what happens. Lifespans just take a nosedive. By the time we get down to Terah, Abram's father, it's down to 205 years. What this is telling us is that the world is in a state of decay, and it's into this very world that a new promise of life is about to be injected. And so, after funneling all the way down from all of humanity through just one of Noah's sons and down a very specific lineage, the story finally lands on Abram. This is it. This is the climax of the entire narrative structure we've been following. And this is where that long, long chain of names finally ends. Terah became the father of Abram. It looks so simple, right? Just another name on a list. But this single line is the destination the author has been leading us to for chapters. All of history in this narrative is now converging on this one man. And what a man to pick. Get this, he's 75 years old. This is not the age you typically start a new life, let alone an entire new nation. His wife is barren. He has no heir. From any human perspective, this is a totally impossible mission. And yet this is the moment God speaks. He gives Abram, who is later renamed Abraham, this absolutely staggering promise. He will become a great nation, and through him all the peoples on earth will be blessed. This is the direct answer to the scattering at Babel. God's grand solution to global division begins not with some huge empire, but with one elderly, childless man and a promise. But this promise isn't just a one-and-done deal for Abraham. No, it's meant to be a legacy, something passed down through the generations. It becomes a chain of blessing that keeps the story moving forward. So, how does this promise continue? Well, Abraham eventually has his son Isaac, and the promise is passed on to him. Isaac then passes it to his son, Jacob. But the narrative is brutally honest here. This is not some perfect, neat process. It is filled with sibling rivalry, deception, and all kinds of failure. And yet, through all the human messiness, the promise holds. The story makes it so clear that it's God's faithfulness, not human perfection, that keeps this chain together. So let's pull the camera all the way back one last time. We started with a question, remember? Are these genealogies just boring lists? I think by now we can see the answer is a definitive no. They are the narrative spine of the entire story. They matter a lot. So what do these lists ultimately mean? Well, for one, they reveal a belief that there's a divine plan of salvation unfolding right in the middle of human history. They show God's faithfulness to a promise, even when the people carrying that promise fail over and over again. In Christian theology, this is the very family line that eventually leads to Jesus, connecting the story of Genesis directly to the Gospels. The ultimate takeaway here is that, from this perspective, history isn't just a series of random events, it's a story with an author and a very clear purpose. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Seeing how these biblical authors wove so much purpose through these ancient family trees, well, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if our own story, our own small place in the long chain of generations, is also part of a much bigger picture that we just can't always see?